Hello, good evening. Welcome. It's Tuesday. Well, I guess it depends on when you're watching us, but today is Tuesday. I'm Allison, and we've got producer Ken running around making all the magic happen, and we are from Gotham Quilts. So, welcome and thank you so much for joining us on this lovely Tuesday evening, or whenever you're watching us on the replay. So, we love to see where you are from across the country, whether you're watching us on the replay or live. So, go ahead and throw that in the chats. Be sure to say hello. And today we're talking all about scrappiness. I am not by nature a scrappy person, but I've had a couple of days. I've had a nice long weekend to sew with this Jen Kingwell fabric, and I don't know. I might be a scrappy person after this. Who knows? We'll see. So any questions that you have, throw them in the chat. We are happy to answer them either live or on the replay. We still follow up. So you might have gathered from the topic, or if you are just joining us, if you saw us live and you're just joining us, we are talking all about Jen Kingwell's new fabric, the Lollies. This is the Gathered Lollies. And hello, Lollie. Welcome from Georgia. I bet it's pretty hot out there in Georgia. Hot and sticky, I bet. So hopefully you're inside doing a lot of sewing, which is what we highly recommend on hot weather days. So we are talking all about Scrappy today, and it's going to be, I think you're going to have fun in this particular show. So let's start off with, what are we even talking about here? So Jen Kingwell is a Australian designer, a lovely person. She's been around for, a number of years. We are all gentle people here. We're all ladies, so we don't need to put an exact count to it. But Jen's been around for forever. If you don't know her by name or by face, you might know her style. And as we get into some of these fabrics especially, but some of the quilts I'm going to show you in just a little bit, I think you might say, oh yeah, I know that style. That's a Jen Kingwell style. She's known for being very naturally scrappy, very kind of a cohesive scrappy with lovely background textures, especially if you are familiar with the boho hearts pattern. That was kind of my first relatively recent introduction to Jen and her scrappy style. But there are certain key points, and I'll get to these later in the show, that make a very scrappy look easy to come about, even if you're not a naturally scrappy person, and B, very cohesive. And so that's what Jen does. She's also known for amazing template work. You can see in this quilt behind her that there are some very sharp points and some very curvy curves. And so template work and kind of complex piecing, but bringing in that scrappy nature is Jen's. That's her signature. That's her MO. So with that, thank you. We've got some people who are enjoying the quilt behind me, and this just happened to be on. I'll take a little pause because this is another very well-known designer. You might recognize the fabric. This is Tula Pink, and the fabric in the cat is a Deja Vu line. This is the, oh my goodness, the Deja Vu, the cat one. I'm completely blanking. I knew it before I went live. The lights are on, the camera's on, and my mind just went blank. So it'll come to me in the show. When I scream out a cat-related name, you'll know that that's the fabric behind me. Unfortunately, this particular fabric went super fast. Of all of the Tula lines we've had since I've been a shop owner, this one went the fastest. Yeah, if you can think of it. If anybody can think of the name of the fabric behind me, a million super cool points if you put that in the chat. So help me out because I just took me a blank. But this is a Villa Rosa pattern called Cat City. We've got that on Gotham if you want to check it out. Really easy to go together, and you could do a lot of really cute, fun stuff. Easy to expand out too, to make it the cat ledge longer and to put more cats in there to make it a bigger size quilt. So thank you for the comments on the quilt behind me. You could also, in theory, if you don't mind a scrappy cat, you could use the Lollies, which we are talking about today. Now, you might say, what is a Lollie? It's I don't think Jen necessarily created it, but I see it a lot with her lines. Moda did a Lollie section, but what it is it is a fantastic way to get a lot of prints into a single cut of fabric. And so right now what you're looking at is just kind of some of the leftover pieces that I had from a quilt I was working on. Joanne, you get 1,000,000 super cool points. That is Tabby Road Deja Vu. Yes, thank you so much. 1,000,000 super cool points to Joanne. Thank you for helping me out. So the Lollie is, if you are, and I feel a little weird saying this because I'm not at all Australian, although I do watch a lot of like Great British Bake Off, which isn't Australian, but you know, there's sharing some words between Australia and the UK. But Lollie is kind of slang for sweets, candies. Kind of like a lollipop, but I think it goes a little bit further than just the lollipop specifically. But it's slang for sweets in Australia. But these are called lollies. And I'm going to take some of these away so we can just focus on one strip of fabric. This here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different strips of fabric. And so you can see here all along the length of the fabric, sorry, the width of the fabric, you've got 4 different prints on this side. You open it up. We've got it folded on the fold in the math in the midway point here. And then from the midway point to the other selvage, we've got 4 more prints here. And so the way it's designed is with any given cut of fabric that you get, you are going to get 8 different prints that go along with it. Now, in this particular collection, this is called the Gathered Lollies by Jen. She's done this a couple of the other times. There are other lollies that you might have seen. But since we're talking about these today, let's talk about the colorways involved. So we talked about in each fabric, you're going to get 8 different prints. There are 2 different colorways that consist of 8 fabrics each. So if you're doing the math at home, we've got 2 colorways. Each colorway has 8 bolts of fabric, 8 prints, we'll call it. And in each print, you get 8 unique prints. So if you're doing the math, you are getting 128 different prints with what is essentially these 2 apple peels right here. You're getting 128 different prints in just these 2 rolls of fabric. Now, if you're not familiar with apple peels, they lean into kind of like our sister shop, Tiny Apple, or Gotham, we've got the Big Apple. Apple peel is going to be 6 inches by the entire width of fabric. So because you're getting an entire width of fabric in these, you're getting all 8 prints. But each one of these little roll-ups has 8 different fabrics in it. So 128, oh, that's so heavy for 128 fabrics in there. So I mentioned there are 2 different colorways, and I'll give you a better view of that. But here we've got those both here. Now, the fabric that I had out previously, I'm going to show you this bundle first. We'll show it to you all folded up, and then I can open it up and show you what's going on here with those particular lollies. So this is more of a kind of a green, yellow, brown. There are some purples in there. This is what I would call maybe a cooler, although it's not. You might look at it and say, oh, there's some warm colors in there. It's got some warm tones in it, but it's the cooler of the 2. So let's go ahead and open up this beautiful bundle. This right here, what we're looking at is a 1/2 yard bundle. And that is a really great cut of fabric for these particular lollies, because as you open them up, and you can get some additional images on this on our website, or if you saw it on the email. But coming out here, we've got these fabrics, and then we'll flip it around, and we've got these guys. And you'll see, especially as we get into some of these other fabrics, we've got some greens there, and then we'll flip it over, and we've got some more greens. You can see just how much variety you have here. Now, some of these prints might be familiar. Some are new to this particular collection, but some of them are older Jen Kingwell prints that are recolored for this. Now, I will say down here on this last print here, this one is all kind of words and definitions around gathered, which is the feeling of this. Gathered, you might recall, is the name of Jen's newest book. She's got Gathered 2 that came out, gosh, maybe about 6-8 months ago, something like that. So that's been out for a minute. There are a number of quilts in that particular book that are using these fabrics, this coloration. And so you can see here we've got the bundle. I'll go a little bit faster so you can see all this. But like I said, it's a great way to get some cohesive scrappiness into your collection, into your project. And like I say, if you are not a scrappy person, I wouldn't necessarily call myself scrappy generally, but I've got some tips for you to help either be a little scrappy, or if you've got a project, like you want to use these fabrics, for example, of how to be scrappy and not have it take over your life or your energies. Now, the other thing I will point out here is you can see where one lolly, I guess, is distinct from another one. There is a printed line, like a kind of a dotted line that's intended for you that you can cut on for sure. But you can also use that as a design element, and I'll show you a project where we have done that. Now, we do have a couple of free patterns coming up in this particular show, so if you are inspired to use these fabrics, these 2 patterns are going to be designed specifically for lollies to use this. So that's the first collection. That one is, let's see here, I've got my little pieces here. Perfect. Okay, so now let's go on to the next one. So this one is more of the warm colors, and you can see we've got these rich oranges and reds and pinks. This one leans way more into those very warm colors. So let's open up this fun guy and we'll see what we've got for these lollies. We've got this guy over here, and then on the flip side. Now these ones I think are a little bit tricky because a lot of times people aren't really sure what to do with this. You get this fabric, and this fabric has 8 different fabrics on it. What's a person to do, right? And I hope that these 2 patterns and the tips we'll give you in just a second will give you some inspiration. But the reason that I think these are so easy to work with, especially if you are not scrappy by nature, is because they have been recolored. I started saying earlier that these are prints by Jen that have been recolored. A lot of them are prints that are in existence, but recolored specifically for this format, in that even though they are scrappy, even though the colors do appear so incredibly different, because they were all recolored together, you know they're going to look good together. And look at those oranges. Oh my goodness, they're so gorgeous. Now, I will say on this, we've got some pretty bright lights. This one looks a little oranger on the camera than it does in real life, that this kind of leans a little more into the peachy. I think it has to do with this particular one, and that those orange stripes are really taking over, but the background is a peachy pink. So in person, it's a little more peachy, although it is very orange forward for sure. The other piece that I will point out with these is that these lollies are fantastic to use for anything that you've got that uses 5-inch squares. From this dotted line to this dotted line, the width here is 5 1/4, give or take. So even if you factor out these lines, you're going to have a full 5 inches of height, we'll call it, to work with on this. So anything that uses charm packs, the 5-inch squares are going to be fantastic for this. And you get a whole lot of fabric bang for your buck on this. And then here is the final print of the second colorway, kind of the warmer of the 2. Now, you might say, this is fantastic, Allison. Lovely prints. They look great together, but what can I do with them? So let me get started on the 2 free patterns that we've got for you today. The first one is this lovely one, and this is available on Jen Kingwell's website directly. You can scan on that QR code, or if you are on a mobile device, just take a little screenshot, go into your pictures, and you can click on that link just like you would if you were scanning a QR code. So this is going to take you directly to Jen Kingwell's website where you can download this pattern. This is called Lollie Wheels. And the thing that I want to point out is, do you see the squares, the middle pinwheel, and there's a dark line around it? That is taking full advantage of these dotted lines between all of the lollies, and it's making it a design element. So we've got here the Lollie Wheels pattern. This pattern is going to be for a quilt. I think it's 56 inches squared, if I'm not mistaken. Lovely pattern, very excited, and I cannot wait to see you guys make that up. Another pattern that is also free, and this one is going to come from the Gotham website. This is the Gather at the Table is what it is. The fabric line is called Gathered, and it's Gather at the Table. And this is going to be instructions on making a placemat, or just double it up. You've got yourself a table runner. But it's really the technique that the pattern is for. This too is using that middle kind of cutting line as a design element. And it's really very grounding, and it brings your eye exactly to where the design wants it, so it's not so busy. You can imagine if you just had a bunch of other fabrics kind of floating around and nothing to ground it, it might get to be a little much, a little hard to follow. So I think I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm giving away the tips before I've even gotten to it. So some of these you'll remember when we get to it. But this is the Gathered at the Table runner, placemat, whichever you want to make from it. And the last quilt that I want to show you is going to lead right into our tips and tricks for dealing with scrappy layouts. And this one is called Tile Sequence. The reason I wanted to bring this up, now this one is not a free pattern. It's available on Gotham for purchase. This one you're using a set of lollies and some background fabric. And what's so great about this one is, although the pattern is written and designed for either layer cakes or 5-inch squares, either 10-inch squares or 5-inch squares, this one, because you're using these lollies, it is so easy to strip piece. Now, if you're getting the kit or the pattern from Gotham, we'll have those instructions for you. Maybe we'll even write a blog post about how easy and fun it is to strip piece this, but putting it together is a piece of cake. That's the other great thing about these lollies is you're cutting your strip of fabric. So this might be a little easier to show here. And then you are sewing just to the side of it. And you've got one side that's going to be your background, and you've got one side that's going to be your decorative lolly. And like I say, it's super easy to strip piece and very fun to put together that tile sequence. So without further ado, just remember some of these things as we get into this. Now, the reason I wanted to put this little presentation together, these tips and tricks, is because, like I say, I am not a naturally scrappy person. I know that some of you are, but sometimes I get so frozen. It's kind of analysis paralysis. There's so many options. There's so much to do. And I don't want to make a mistake. So I end up just doing nothing. And I'll tell you a little story, a non-quilting story about when that happened in my life. So how can you be scrappy without freezing up, right? And this one is to give yourself some guide rails, right? You're not generally choosing from an infinite number of fabrics. That if you do something that will narrow what it is that you're looking at or narrow it in when you're putting it together, it makes it a lot easier, because then you're not dealing from a pool of everything, you're dealing from a pool of what's left. So some examples of that are, just like you saw in tile sequence, is one background. one background is following you through the entire quilt, so you've got some cohesiveness there. Then where you put the individual scrappy fabrics doesn't much matter because you've got that background to tie you through the entire quilt. Some examples of when we get into quilts where there isn't a background, kind of like the wheel quilt here, is if you are saying, like, if you're looking in the middle, you don't want two darks next to each other or two lights next to each other. Then you're not dealing from the entire population. You've got it narrowed down, and it's a little bit easier to pick from there. So don't start from the world. As they say in IT, I feel is where I hear it a lot, is don't boil the ocean. Set some parameters and narrow down that pool for what you're looking for. Sort by value, not by color. And that the Lollie Wheel quilt was a great example of that. You don't want things to match. Scrappy quilts look good. They look like they belong because of contrast, not because this color looks good to this color. That a great place to start is to sort your fabrics into light, medium, and dark. And then you can kind of pick from random from there. Once you get the value taken care of, once you get that narrowed in, everything else just kind of falls into place. So start by value, not by that color. As we say when we're talking about our Color for Quilters class especially, is that color gets all the glory, but value does all the work. It does all the heavy lifting. And then here is, we've got set a ratio and stick to it. This goes kind of along with the first ones, is setting a rule and then going with it takes some of the decision making out of it. This one is a great one low volume for every 2 prints. You don't want 2 of the same print touching. And I can bring this up as an example. Let me go to the table runner here, in that you can see, because of how the lollies were cut, so we'll do this so you can see it here. We've got this print and this print. The only rule I had here is I didn't want these 2 touching. Actually, I take that back. There was another rule. I only had a few of these purples, so I didn't want them on the same line or the same row. So I wanted to separate those. But other than that, those were the 2 rules that I put together. I don't want the same print touching, and no more than 1 purple per row. And then I put this kind of light guy up there because he was a purple too. Those were the 2 rules, and then I just went to town on it. So having those guidelines, those rules, can make it a lot easier for what you're trying to get to. This is my favorite one, and this works for so many different things. It is a recommendation that I have in the shop here. If you are shopping for fabric for any kind of a quilt, scrappy or not, is walk away. Lay it out and then walk away. In scrappy especially, sometimes we can get a little too in the weeds, a little too into it, where things kind of start to look weird even though they aren't. So leaving it laid out, walking away, grabbing a coffee, even leaving the room and coming back in, that fresh look can give you a completely different viewpoint, in that a lot of these scrappy layouts that we think, oh, that looks so bad, really aren't that bad. They just need a little bit of distance and a fresh set of eyes. This works really well when you're shopping for fabrics in the quilt store too. Once you get your fabrics laid out and you're just like, oh, you're kind of maybe thinking too much about it, or you're getting too in the weeds with it, what we recommend is for people to turn around away from the fabric that they picked out, maybe even take a lap around the store and come back to it with fresh eyes. So this advice works for all sorts of different things. Lay it out, walk away, come back. And this is another question. If the lay it out, walk away, come back still is not getting you the gut feel that you want about it, is trust the one thing rule. Instead of saying, I'll just say, what sucks about this, right? What looks horrible about this? Ask the question, what's the one thing that's bothering me? What's the one fabric that needs to be swapped out? What's the one block that needs to be turned maybe? Try just one thing. because this is another boil the ocean thing. If you're saying, what looks horrible about this? It's overwhelming. If you narrow in on just one thing, pull one thing out and see if that fixes the problem. Turn one block, see if that fixes the problem. Try just one thing and going from there. This is another great one, and I'm going to refer back to the placemat again, is cut more than you think that you need, especially if you're working on fabrics or, a scrappy layout like this. Do more than you think, because with these, if you have this, it takes 20 squares. If I cut just 20 squares, the choice I have is not which one of these do I get rid of. It's which one of these do I swap around. So it doesn't give me a whole lot of room to work with if my only option is I can take this one and I can put it here or I could put it here, but that's it. You need to have the ability to get rid of some things, kick them to the curb, and never see them again. So if you cut just 20 squares for a 20 square project, you're stuck with all of them. So for this one, I got a whole bunch of extra, and then I'll show you what I did. I'm going to get rid of these fabrics because there's a lot going on in this guy. But what I did with the extra blocks that I didn't need is I turned it into a scrappy binding. I used those extra pieces to add just a little bit of zhuzh to my binding. So with that, it's always better to have more than you think you need, and then do something fun with what you've got left over. And then here is my bonus one. When all else fails, go random. And this is this is a story. It's not related to quilting, but it might tell you what kind of person I am. And if you are this kind of person too, we need to stick together. So put that in the chat too. Is when we were painting the house and we had this really hideous, ugly tan brick. And I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? We're not going to take it off. That's too much work. We're just going to paint it. So painting it different shades of gray to match the coloring of the house. I had my 4 different shades of gray and white and got so overwhelmed with what color is going to go where that I was paralyzed. I can't start this project. I don't know what's going to go where. I don't want to paint the wrong color on the wrong brick. So what I did was outside, I felt like such a weirdo. Outside, I had my cans of paint and I had a die, like from Monopoly games, like a die. And I used that to determine what color was going to go on what brick. I don't know what the neighbors thought I was doing, but they must have thought it was very bizarre. But the point is putting the decision in the hands of chance, in the hands of this die, is what allowed me to finish. And it ended up looking great and fabulous. And sometimes random is exactly what you need. Sometimes that's exactly what scrappy looks like. And so if you focus too much on it, if you think too much on it, that kind of takes away the fun, and it also takes away the scrappy layout, because you could end up with like all of the greens in one area. And if that's what you're going for, that is perfect and fabulous. But if you ever get stuck, just put your project in the hands of fate and go completely random. So with that, I can sum this all up into pick a rule, follow the rule, stop negotiating, stop thinking about it, just get sewing. So with that is Jen Kingwell's new Gathered Lollies. I hope that this was inspirational. I hope that this is giving you an idea maybe how to bring a little scrap. If you've got scraps that you need to use, or if you want to give this fabric a try, getting an apple peel gives you, in this particular one, we've got 64 different fabrics. In this one, we've got 64 other fabrics. It's a really great starting place to get a lot of fabric without having 64 bolts or 64 cuts, depending on what you're looking for. A little bit of the housekeeping thing. Oh, one thing I do want to point out is I know that shopping online can sometimes be a little tricky. So we picked out some background fabrics. If this is the kind of scrappy layout that you want to go with, is have a cohesive background fabric. The lollies, the kind of scrappiness of it, the varied nature of the fabrics really does well with a background fabric that isn't just a solid color. And so one of my favorites for this particular line is the paparazzi. Now, when you're looking at the image, probably on your screen, depending on how high resolution it is, it might look very solid. But when you're looking at it, this is actually the fabric that I used in this particular binding here. And so you could see there's just a little bit of texture. It's some dots in there. It gives it just a little bit of interest and a little bit of texture, but not so much that it's detracting from all that's going on here. So paparazzi is one of my favorite backgrounds for a lot of things, especially a fabric like this that really needs something a little more interesting than just a plain solid to stand up to. So paparazzi, we've got a handful of different colors. The one I used was stone. It's just kind of a nice neutrally tan. There are some darker, there are some lighter, there's all kinds of different colors. So paparazzi, a great line by Riley Blake. We also have a handful of the mixed bag of bonbons. These are great kind of gentle background. There's a lot of interest going on. It's one of those things that you might need to expand it on your screen to see the texture there, because just from afar, when you're looking at an image, it might look like a solid green or gray, but we've got a handful of these guys. This was the line that came out, I think, either one before or two before the Gathered. So they, of course, pair lovely with the lollies here. And then last but not least, we've got our newest thread talk. This is going to be September. Now, September, because of how the month falls, this one is really early in the month. This is going to be September 2nd. This is Cindy Grizdella. Sorry, I always want to call her Grizdella, which actually is correct. Griselda is what I was calling her before. But so sorry, Cindy, I have butchered your name every time I said it. But Cindy Grizdella, it will be on Thread Talks on Wednesday, September 2nd, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time, to talk about freehand curves, in impromptu curves in quilting. Her newest book came out in January, but this lecture is not just about that particular book. This is all about improvs and how to bring a little bit of improv into your quilting practice. So Cindy Grizdella is going to be our next Thread Talk speaker. It is going to be a fantastic one. And for everyone who saw the last one with Bob Bosher, talking about, kind of breaking out of the norm, that the quilting doesn't have to be so prescribed and so serious, that it was a really great Thread Talk, and I know that Cindy's will be just as good. So be sure to sign up for that. That is going to be in just a few weeks here. So with that, I think we've got all the questions answered. I want to thank you so much for joining us on this lovely episode, this scrappy episode of Live with Gotham Quilts. And we hope to see you next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. That's Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, if not before. And I really hope before.